Welcome to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast, brought to you by the Wealthy Speaker School. This is the podcast dedicated to people who want to speak more as a way to build their income and grow their business. Well, welcome everyone to the Wealthy Speaker Podcast. I'm your host, Jane Atkinson, and today we have an industry legend on the show with us. Welcome, Mr. Mark LeBlanc.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
Hey, now I'm in Canada and we put a French spin on everything. So I would say LeBlanc with a silent C. Do you pronounce the C or not?
Well, in Minnesota, we pronounce the C.
Okay.
But when I'm in Canada, it's silent. Or when I'm in Louisiana, it's silent.
Oh, there you go, because they have the French take on everything as well. Okay, I'm so glad. That was very important that we got that straightened away. Now, you have a really interesting business model. You were one of the very first speakers that I knew of that did kind of more than just speaking. Talk a little bit about your approach and how that all came together for you.
Well, I've had kind of an interesting path. I mean, I walked into my first meeting, my first NSA meeting when I was 21 years old.
That is young.
And I think I was in junior high, or at least my picture looks like I was in junior high. And it was as if a switch went off in my head and my heart and my gut. And I thought, this is it.
I found my people.
I found my people. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I told my dad a few weeks later at Christmas time, I said, I now know what I want to do for the rest of my life. And he said, what's that? And I said, I'm going to be a professional speaker. And he looked at me and he said, can you make any money doing that? And I said, I don't know, but I met this group called NSA and they're all rich.
You drank the Kool-Aid at that first meeting.
Yeah. Now, little did I know then what I know today. Right. Obviously, they were not all rich, but where could a young guy at 21 put his toe in a profession and have the opportunity to have the kind of impact and influence that hopefully I've been able to have over the last 37 years.
37. Wow. I thought I was had been in this a while, but I think you've got a few years on me, Mark. So tell us now about the way your business operates today. Who are your ideal clients in terms of speaking? And tell us about the other things that you do in your business as well.
Well, it took me a number of years to find my voice and to find my way in this profession. But for the last 20-ish years, all of my work has been in professional services.
Okay.
Of some stripe. I speak a lot in the financial services world, some real estate. Actually, I've become somewhat well-known now in the dental world here in the last 7 or 8 years. That has actually surpassed my work in financial services. And like many, I mean, I have 5 different profit centers. I have what I would call my paid speaking, my booking profit center.
Yep.
I also do stage a number of my own events.
Okay.
So I have a public seminars profit center.
Okay.
I have a coaching profit center. I've written 4 books, business books, and I've dabbled in a bit, but we're looking at expanding that starting in 2021 into licensing my intellectual property.
Oh, lovely. Now, have you got that all sorted out yet? Because that's an area that I don't have a lot of experience in. And, where do people begin when they want to do licensing for their work? Like, where do you even start? Who is your model to say, I want to do it like them?
Well, there's as many different answers as there are different people in this world, and right. In terms of licensing. And I think part of it is just sort of the surface level. In order for something to be licensable,
Mm-hmm.
your intellectual property has to be somewhat unique and original.
Exclusive. Yeah.
And part of the litmus test for that is language, terminology,
Right.
and then how you allow somebody to use that work.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm going to say approximately 15 years ago, a number of people were coming at me saying, Mark, I really like your work in marketing or business. And it seems as if you figured some things out and you explain it. You've taken complex issues and you've dialed it down into digestible chunks. Can
Right.
I teach and share your work? At the time, it was honoring and humbling.
Mm-hmm. But
And
you weren't ready.
I wasn't ready,
Yeah.
but it was seductive. It's like, oh my God, this is really cool.
Mm.
I did not understand the unique profile of what I would now say my right or perfect fit licensee is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'm one part of my journey in being on my own my entire adult life is I just try something.
Right. Why
And if
not?
it,
Right. What do you have
why
to
not? And
lose?
if it doesn't work, I step back and jettison something or add something. And so that has been my hallmark. One year I earned about $50,000 in licensing fees, which for dabbling in it, I thought was pretty darn good.
Yes, for sure.
But as I began to learn more about it and the different ways that you could look at it, we put it on the back burner. And
Because
now,
it's a lot of work to support licensing, isn't it? It
it,
sounds like a good idea. You have
mhm,
to think through the whole situation. What if this happens? What if that happens? How is that going to look?
exactly. And so we put it on the back burner, and now we're going to reintroduce it starting in January of 2021.
Okay.
We feel we've learned enough that we want to take another stab at it.
Well, one thing I want to unpack about that is the fact that when you label your ideas with language that other people see as different, then this gives you an opportunity to potentially license down the road. And I've just had a client coming to me, one of my masterminds, who said, I'm not really sure how to do this. And so we batted around a whole bunch of ideas. And my philosophy is often keep it simple.
Mhm.
But I don't know in licensing if that's even possible to keep it simple. It seems like it
Well,
might not be.
it's not, but I think part of the key is finding the right people.
Right.
And if you don't find the right people, I mean, I'm not looking for strangers on the internet who want to license, my work.
Right.
And there are people like, John Maxwell and
He's
Martha Beck
right.
as a life coach. I mean, they've created licensing empires.
Yes.
And I don't mean this to be disrespectful. And I'm not going to say this about John or Martha, but I mean, many of them are looking for a prospect with a pulse and the ability to write a check.
Right.
And at that point, it's less about licensing and more about certifying people, many of whom will never do a thing with your work.
Right, right. And you're probably really drilling down on values to decide who's going to be a good fit for you. You have a level of authenticity about you, and you're just a nice person. So I'm thinking if you have someone who's authentic and nice, that's two boxes that are checked, and then you can proceed from there.
That's right.
Skills and talent and all those types of things
Yeah.
will come later.
So somebody really has to be familiar with my work. I
Right.
mean, I'm looking for 12 master licensees.
Okay.
I
Good to
may
know.
have I may have many, many more sort of sub licensees, but I'm looking for a core of 12, and those people need to be familiar with my work. They need to be a product of my work. They
All
need
right.
to have been connected to me with for me a year or two or more.
Okay.
There needs to be a relationship.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. So let's just give a website right now. We'll have Monica put it in the show notes. If somebody wanted to just kind of raise their hand and said, yeah, Mark, I know your work, what would you want them to do?
They could reach out to me through my site at
Okay.
markleblanc.com.
Okay.
Or my email address is mark, M-A-R-K, at growingyourbusiness.com.
Okay, Mark at growingyourbusiness.com. Awesome. So you found yourself going deep into, let's say this dental industry that you've become more and more of a household name in, somebody who is licensed by you may be able to go into dentistry and do those lower paid engagements, and you'll still receive some rewards for that. And that's a great idea when you can have someone else, when you can be making money without actually showing up, I guess is what I'm kind of saying, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I love that. Good for you. Okay. So the paid speaking, would you say that that's the biggest chunk of your business, or have the live events become like a bigger thing for you? Talk about your live events so that people who maybe aren't familiar with you, they'll understand what those are.
Sure. I would say that my estimate would be the breakdown. I always say I run a speaking business. I never say I run a speaking coaching business. It's like I run a speaking business out of Minneapolis, and I would say that about 50% of my revenues are derived from my own events and my speaking fees.
Okay, gotcha. So talk about your Achiever Circle.
The Achiever Circle is something I created 19 years ago now.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you. And quite frankly, I feel that it is my life's work. It was sort of begun on a dare. At the time, in the late 90s, there were a number of very smart people that were creating these boot camps and charging quite a bit of money. And running people through the ringer, for 3 or 4 days from morning till midnight. And it wasn't really my style.
Right.
But I thought, what if I played with the concept of the anti-boot camp? What would that look like? And I sat down one day, in about 3 hours, I created what I now call the Achiever Circle. Again, I tried it. And I plunked 3 weekends down on the calendar, and that was 145 business retreats ago.
Wow, good for you.
And the model hasn't changed. We start at 3 o'clock on a Friday. We end at noon on Sunday. It's intense, but it's in a relaxed environment. I take up to 15 people.
Okay.
And at the end of the weekend, people write a check or put an amount on a credit card for whatever they want.
See, now I think that is about the most unique thing I've ever even heard of in our industry. You and I are in the same space, and oftentimes I've had clients who have already been to you now come to me, and likely the reverse has happened. And I just think that is your heart is just so wide open when you do that. And I try to operate fearlessly, Mark, but I can't go that far. I just can't say, just come and, pay me. We'll spend a year together and you can just pay me at the end of the year, whatever you think it was worth. I can't get myself that far. But that is so amazing. So how does that work for you? Do you find that most people are more generous than you would expect or less? Or is there some sort of balancing?
I've learned a lot about judgment.
Yes.
Because there are some people who come in and they talk a good game and they're not really in a very good, position.
Right.
Either calendar-wise, confidence-wise, or financially.
Right.
And there are others who are nervous and they come in and at the end of the weekend, they will look at me with tears in their eyes and just say, Mark, there's no way that I could put a value on this.
Wow.
And give you what this has been worth to me, and they're the big surprises.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it. And that's a lesson that actually translates over to speaking, because where you think there isn't going to be a fee, or how the little green monster can land on your shoulder and start telling you that they're not going to pay you for what you want. Um, I think that's often the case, is that you basically blanket is you should never assume. You
that's right.
should never assume that you know how much money somebody has, or an individual, or even a speaking engagement, an event. I love it.
Mhm.
Well, I love how you operate, and I just bow to you, sir.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Thank you.
Now, let's talk about over the course of your 37-year career, I think you said,
Mhm.
or business. What were the flashpoints that you saw, big bursts of growth after you did something?
Well, I would also share that for the first 10 years, I was part-time or any time while I was building and growing a creative graphics printing and mailing company.
I did not know that about you.
Mhm.
That's awesome. You're like
And
a half Harvey McKay kind of situation there.
and
Okay.
from the same city.
Well,
Uh,
yeah.
so I grew that from 21 to 31. I attended, NSA about every other year. I was involved with my chapter here in Minneapolis, and I wasn't speaking often enough to really find my way. But gradually, as I was a business owner, so now 7, 8, 9 years coming into the age of 30,
Hmm.
people started to take me more seriously.
Right.
And I made the decision at that point to sell that business and speak full time.
And that was probably a flashpoint right there, right? When you put all of your energies into one place.
That was a turning point or flash point. I was in a mastermind group for 17 years. And as I like to say, I came in at about 35, and I was the low guy on the totem pole.
Hmm.
And this group of really quite amazing people took me in, put me under their wings, and I really credit that mastermind group with helping elevate my success.
That's awesome.
Um,
That's awesome. And I think that, if you don't have anyone who you can bounce your ideas off of, find yourself a mastermind, find yourself a coach, check out Mark's Achiever Circle, find somewhere that you can go and take all your questions.
mhm,
I have coaches now that I just could not live without.
mhm,
It's
mhm,
really lovely to be able to have somewhere to go to say, hey, should I do this or this?
mhm, mhm.
If you're unclear. Do you have a coach?
I do. I
That's
do.
cool.
Yeah.
And so, okay, so you get into the business full time, and that is a shift. Talk about when you wrote your first book. Was that a shift?
Well, that would be my next real flashpoint,
Mm-hmm.
and would truly set the course, really for the rest of my career. In 20 years ago, in late 1999, I published my first book titled "Growing Your Business."
Right.
About 2 years prior to that, I had this moment of truth. Like many speakers, I was probably speaking on too many topics, too many titles, too many presentations. And when my calendar was light and my confidence was low, I'm going to say 96 or 97, I had this moment where I thought, if I could do growing your business 50 presentations a year at my fee, at my then fee, I would be happier than a pig in mud. And I literally threw everything else away and began to see both my confidence grow, my calendar started to fill up. Then in late 99, I wrote the book, Growing Your Business. And there's a lot of credibility Jane, and you certainly will understand this, when an association executive or committee might say, hey, we should have somebody come in and help our members grow their business.
Right.
Hey, I know, maybe we should get the person who wrote the book Growing Your Business.
Perfect.
And later, and I didn't understand it at the time, we now call it the trifecta. And the trifecta is book title, presentation title, and email address the same.
Look at that. The brand, it crosses all purposes.
So there's a lot of power in, he wrote the book, Growing Your Business. He's given over 1,000 now presentations titled Growing Your Business. Mm-hmm. And his email address is mark@growingyourbusiness.com. That's the power.
That is, I love the trifecta. Again, you're naming things. That's fabulous. And does it bother you as it bothers me? And I don't want to make anybody feel bad. I would just like them to get off the mark on this. When you see an AOL address at the end of somebody's email address?
You know, it does. And, whether it's AOL or Gmail or Hotmail is probably the worst. But I mean, there are people who've got one or two toes in the water. And at some point, and one of my pearls of wisdom that I like to share is think like an artist, but act like a business owner.
Oh, that's so good.
How many business owners are truly using Hotmail or Gmail for their email address?
Right. And so you're missing out on a branding opportunity every single time. And I love the idea of aiming for the trifecta. Mm-hmm. If you don't have a book yet, and I have clients right now who want to write a book on not a topic that is in line with the trifecta. I'm like, wait a second, let's just pull it all together here again. Sometimes I think it's like herding cats, right? Yeah. But okay. All right. So we've had some flashpoints going full time. We talk about any kind of mistakes that you wish you would have maybe not made, or have you got any doozies under your belt?
Well, the biggest mistake I believe I made early on was thinking that I was better than I was.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more about that.
I just thought I was better. And I thought that if I got booked, I could put it together. Give me 6 months or give me 3 months to put together a presentation, and I can do that. And I could. The challenge became I wasn't becoming known for something, and I wasn't speaking often enough on any one area of expertise.
I get you now.
To really find my chops.
Okay, so you hadn't picked a lane. If you had your time back, you would have picked a lane sooner so that you could become great and become known at your trifecta of business, grow your business.
I would have picked a lane, and I definitely would have raised my hand and looked out at a presentation skills or performance skills. I think what happens so often, Jane, and gosh, I've had so many big flashpoints or turning points in my career. One was studying the work of Lee Glickstein.
Mm-hmm. Is he speech coach?
Speech coach.
Yeah.
And understanding the difference between a magnetic speaker and a dynamic speaker. And I found out with Lee that I was a magnetic speaker trying to be dynamic.
Interesting. Why don't you give us the definitions of both?
According to Lee and the book of Lee, about 85% of all speakers are naturally magnetic. Okay. They tend to be more conversational, more approachable, even if they're on stage, it's almost like they're having a conversation with the audience.
Right.
when a magnetic speaker who's naturally magnetic tries to be dynamic, they fall short.
Is
It's,
that
it,
is dynamic more energy? Is that the
it can be
difference?
it can be perceived at 15%, again, according to Lee, are naturally dynamic. When a dynamic speaker plays to his or her dynamic strengths, they're over the moon. It's part energy, it's part performance. I mean, think about Tony Robbins is a dynamic speaker.
He's like, he's probably at the highest end of dynamic, wouldn't you say?
Exactly. A Patricia Fripp would be a dynamic speaker.
Okay, that's
Okay.
good. It's helpful to have references. Okay.
And we can be inspired or in awe of a dynamic speaker. We may or may not want to meet them afterwards.
Okay.
Versus a magnetic speaker,
Someone you want to be a buddy with.
you want to be a pal, you want to go thank them, you want to shake their hand or give them a hug. Even if they're on stage, it's almost as if they're down on the ground, speaking directly at me.
Right, right. Now, the people in my world know and have seen a lot of Joe Calloway. Would you call Joe a magnetic speaker or a dynamic speaker? Just so I have my things straight here.
Joe would be, in my mind, a magnetic speaker.
That's someone you want to be a buddy with, and he's very conversational. Okay.
And what Joe has done, whether he's familiar with the work or not, is he has played to his magnetic strengths.
Right.
For 15 years, I was a magnetic speaker trying to be dynamic, and I was missing the mark.
Okay.
With a little bit of work in this, when I began to play to my magnetic strengths, then my evaluations came back, oh, he's so dynamic.
Oh, that's interesting. But really, you were just being your best, most conversational self.
Exactly. So Joe has mastered the art of being a magnetic speaker, whether he realized it or not.
Mm-hmm.
He played to that strength of being conversational and connecting, which makes him so incredibly powerful on the platform, whether he's speaking to 50 or 500 or 5,000.
Okay, so that really helps us understand dynamic is the Tony Robbins of the world versus magnetic. I had heard of Lee way back in the day, but honestly, I didn't know that much about the work, or if I did, I forgot about it. So that's really, really good information. So when you stepped into who you truly were and didn't try to be something that you weren't, everything fell together.
Everything came together.
I love that. I love that. And wouldn't you say that a big part of, as I mentioned earlier, of who you are is just being authentic? And so that's why it wasn't working, because it was inauthentic for you to be dynamic.
That's right.
Ah, so good. Oh, okay. Now I think I know what the title of this podcast might be, but well, to be determined. We'll wait until we're at the end. Now you say something that I don't know if this is a little bit controversial or maybe it goes against the grain. You have a saying on your website, when you are the business, focus is not everything. Can you explain what that means? Did I get that right?
Well, no, that is right.
Okay.
And it's really meant to be somewhat intriguing.
Okay, well, it is. Mission accomplished. I'm intrigued.
My world is the world of independent professionals, like you and me and people who are trying to make it on their own.
Right.
And so the phrase, when you are the business, goes right to the heart and mind and soul of that independent or practice professional.
Right.
Often one of my bits or pieces, one of my messages is, you often hear the expression that focus is everything.
Right.
And of course, everybody raises their hand, and I will say, focus is not everything. Extreme focus is everything today.
Okay.
And that the decisions you make and the steps that you take each and every day will ultimately take you where you want to go, or they won't.
Right, right. And so we have a term here, which actually we got from a good Minnesotan, Ryan Estes. Our hashtag is focused hustle. So it's not just about hustle for the sake of hustle. And it's not hustle to the extreme that you're being a shyster in any way. It's more about just doing the right things consistently, but having the focus of, I think that's what really helps you move forward, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. It really does. And now if you combine that without it, it's so easy to go off on what I call tangents disguised as opportunities.
Gosh, squirrel. Squirrel, bye. I'm down the road and I'm doing something that looks like the newest shiny object. And you know what I've recognized? This is a little kind of personal and off the track, but I have recognized that the people who want to have the get rich quick scheme, which neither your or my businesses offer, right? The people who are after the get rich quick scheme, I think they're going to keep spending their money trying to get it and will never get anywhere. What do you think about that?
Oh, I think that's true. It's the difference between earning a living and creating a life.
Yeah. And maybe when you tap into your why do you even want to do this? You know, you went to your dad at 21 years old and said, I found my people. This is what I want to do. Why was that? It was because you were so passionate about helping people change their lives and maybe putting them in the driver's seat of their own destiny type of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
Yeah. Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's ours as well, in that I love the idea of helping an entire family live out somebody's dream. You know,
Sure.
when you can take your kids on a cruise because you're hired to speak on that cruise and you can have fun for the whole rest of the time, that to me is like living the wealthy speaker dream. Hey, so speaking of dreams, my son-in-law's sister just returned from the Camino. Can you talk about, and I knew a lot about it. I think you were probably the first person that ever exposed me to this idea, whether I followed you on Facebook during that time or what. Talk about the Camino and about what you're doing coming up.
Well, it was 2006 when I first heard about the Camino, and it just gnawed at me for about a month or two. And one day I woke up and I thought, I'm going.
This was pre-marriage, right?
This was pre-marriage. And at the time, I was the vice president of NSA. And it would be 2 years before I could go.
Right.
But I inked it in my calendar. And when I completed my term of service as president of the National Speakers Association, I shaved my head bald. I put a backpack on for the first time in my life, and I flew to Spain and went on a short 500-mile walk.
Okay, let's just set this framework for people who don't know about the Camino. Tell them what it is for people.
Camino is short for the Camino de Santiago, the road to St. James. It's one of the 3 great pilgrimages of the world: Rome, Jerusalem, and Santiago in northern Spain. And people have been walking the Camino for over 1,000 years. And I did it in 2008. I went back in 2014, 2017,
wow.
And I will go back again in the summer of 2020 and walk it for a 4th time.
So how long does it take to go 500 miles?
Approximately 30 days, plus or minus a couple of days. And for me personally, it's the most amazing 30-day personal retreat, moving meditation that you can go on. I mean, you wake up in the morning with only three things on your mind. What am I going to eat today? Will there be a roof over my head tonight? And
Right.
start walking whether you feel like it or not.
Right. Right.
And
That is amazing. I mean, I would have a blister on day two. I really would be problematic because I have a hard time getting shoes that don't bother me.
sure,
What does
sure.
somebody do to prepare for that? How could you even train for it?
The interesting thing, it's really more of a mental game than it is a physical game.
Right.
In the beginning, you think it's all about being physically strong, but those typically, the stronger you are, or the more you train, the more you even unconsciously try to speed walk the Camino. And it wasn't until my second Camino where I realized, no, you're going to have a roof over your head. Just walk, take plenty of breaks, drink plenty of water, and you're going to be just fine.
So that's amazing. Now, there are people along the route who take in the walkers and feed them and things, right?
Well, there are hostels along the way. You must be a registered walker of the Camino, and there are hostels run by churches,
Hmm.
by the cities. There are private hostels, almost like a B&B or bed and breakfast. Those will cost a little bit more, but yeah,
It's
it's
amazing. Well, it's a spiritual journey, wouldn't you say?
it is it is.
And you have gone back. This will be your fourth time or fifth?
It'll be my fourth.
And does your wife go with you now?
She's walked part of it in 2014, and the jury's still out whether she can get the time off. She will do it one day,
Yeah.
but she doesn't quite have the freedom and flexibility that we do.
Well, and that comes right back to what we're talking about. You're literally living the dream.
Mhm.
I mean, you have mapped out what the perfect business for you. Do you ever find that it's foreign for people when they come into your world to think about mapping out the life that's perfect for them?
It's something they think about, but seldom will they put pen to paper
Right, right. And I think we just go, I mean, it's what we think about all day long, every day, really, is
every day.
helping. Yeah. So that's very interesting. All right. Question for you. If you were 22-year-old Mark and just getting started in the speaking industry, um, what advice would you give yourself way back then?
I would go back to raising my hand and finding someone I could trust to help me with my presentation skills. Um,
Ah,
and not just presentation skills, but even how to structure a presentation. I think so many people come in, and whether you're 22 or 32 or 52 and want to step into this profession, we weren't born with this idea of I know how to structure an opening and a closing, and
right.
we remember a few things from speech class in high school or junior high, but to really, I think structure is in the early days more important than presentation skills. If the structure gets put into place properly, your presentation skills will accelerate.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And whenever somebody is just starting out, I will often say that that is not misspent money or time when you put the hard work into getting a great presentation. And I think your idea of picking a lane, of course, comes hand in hand with that, because how can you develop one epic presentation when you've got 10 of them?
That's right. And even if somebody, not that people have to do things the way that I do them, but even if they want to speak on multiple topics or they want to have a menu of multiple presentations, there's
Right.
nothing inherently wrong with that if you do pick a signature focus, a signature dish or a flagship program that you can put your muscle and your might and your marketing behind.
I
Um,
love that. I love that. Now, that's a good point to hop off and wrap this up. However, is there anything that you feel you'd really like to say before we close her up today? And I want to make sure you give your URL again, and we're going to reiterate that if somebody wants to get in touch with you about your Achiever Circle, they would go to
markleblanc.com. My email address is mark, M-A-R-K, at growingyourbusiness.com. And I think one of the pieces of advice that I'm known for that people often find irritating, and that is never let the creation of a marketing tool get in the way of executing a marketing strategy. There are so many people that are bent on, once my website is done.
Waiting.
Once my collateral folder with materials is done.
Right.
Once my brand is developed. Once my book is done, then I'm really going to put myself out there.
Right.
And I'm the opposite. I would rather execute a mix of strategies that get my phone to ring, that will result in more opportunities and more conversations, and not let the creation or the investment of tools get in my way.
I like that. And we do have like this kind of ready, aim, fire approach. And I think what you're saying is that you can still be putting your ideas out there, and you can still be talking to clients while you're waiting for said piece of paper or website or whatever to be done, right? You can still be out there executing.
The reality is that I can, about 100% of the people that I will interview will, when I ask them the question, if I were to give you a referral or somebody was to call you, could you have a conversation with that person?
Right.
And if the fit was right, could you secure a booking? And of course, they will say, well, absolutely, Mark. If somebody reached out to me, I could take that call, have a conversation, and book a speech.
Right.
Well, here's where they don't like me. because my response will be, if you can take a call and make a sale,
right,
you can make a call
and make a sale.
All
right. That's where we're going to leave it. And I love those words being the final thing that people are having ringing through their ear. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us on the show today.
Oh, you're very welcome. What an honor.
And if you have been listening in and have appreciated what Mark has said, hey, get out to wherever you're listening, leave us a rating and a review, and we would be most appreciative of that. And with that, we will say, see you soon, Wealthy Speakers. Bye for now, everyone. Hey, thanks for listening. If you've enjoyed our show, you'll want to come and visit us at the Wealthy Speaker School, where we provide a proven roadmap for building your dream business. Go to wealthyspeakerschool.com. And for show notes for today's podcast, head on over to speakerlauncher.com and click on podcast. I'll see you soon, Wealthy Speakers.